The Roma Wine Company of Fresno, California presents Suspense.
Operator, I've been trying to call Murray Hill 40098 for the last half an hour, and it has been busy. I don't see how it could possibly be busy that long. Can you try that number for me? Please?
I'll be glad to try that number for you. One moment, please.
Oh, I don't see how it could be busy all that time. It's my husband's office, and I'm all alone here in the house. My health is very poor, and I've been so nervous all day long. Isn't I supposed to cut in? Should we start over?
Yeah, ringing.
Ringing Murray Hill 40098.
Hello?
Hello? Is this Mr. Stevenson there?
Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Hello, George?
Yes, this is George speaking.
Hello? Who is this? What number am I calling, please?
I'm here with our client.
Oh, good. Is everything alright? Is the coast clear for tonight?
Yes, George, he says the coast's clear for tonight.
Okay. Alright.
Where are you?
In a phone booth. Don't worry, everything's okay.
You know the address, right?
Yes, I know. Let's see now. At 11 o'clock, the private patrolman goes around the corner to 2nd Avenue for a beer.
That's right, 11 o'clock. And be sure all the lights downstairs are out.
Okay.
There should be only one light visible from the street.
Okay.
What's that? Just a minute, George. Oh, Clayton telling me that at 11:15 a train crosses the bridge. Make some noise in case a window is open. And she screams.
Oh my... Hello? What number is this, please?
Okay, I understand. That's 11:15, the train, eh?
Yeah, do you remember everything else, George?
Yeah, I'll make it quick. As little blood as possible, because our client doesn't wish to make her suffer.
That's right. You'll use a knife.
Yes, a knife. It'll be okay. And afterwards, I'll remove the rings and the bracelets and the jewelry in the bureau drawer, because our client wishes it to look like a simple robbery. Don't worry, everything's okay. I know.
Oh, how awful. Oh, how unspeakably awful. Oh, gosh. Oh, it's awful.
Your number, please.
Operator, I've just been cut off.
What number were you calling?
Well, operator, I was supposed to be calling Murray Hill 40098, but it wasn't. Some wires must have gotten crossed. I was cut into the wrong number, and I just heard the most dreadful thing. Something about a murder. And operator, you'll simply have to retrace that call at once.
I beg your pardon. May I help you?
I knew it was a wrong number, and I had no business listening. But there were two men. There were two cold-blooded fiends, and they're going to murder somebody. Some poor, innocent woman who was all alone in a house near a bridge. And we've got to stop them. We've just got to.
What number are you dialing?
It doesn't matter what number I was calling. This was a wrong number, and you dialed it for me. And we've got to find out what it was immediately.
What number did you call?
Oh, why are you so stupid? What time is it? Do you mean to tell me that you can't find out what that number was just now?
I'll connect you with the chief operator.
Oh, I think this is perfectly shameful. Now look, it was obviously a case of some little slip of your finger. I told you to try Murray Hill 40098 for me. You dialed it, but your finger must have slipped. And I was connected with some other number, and I could hear them, but they couldn't hear me. Now, I simply fail to see why you couldn't make that same mistake again, on purpose. Why couldn't you just try to dial it in the same sorry, the way as you did the first time? Couldn't make that same mistake again on purpose. Why couldn't you try to dial Murray Hill 40098 in the same careless way?
Murray Hill 40098. I will try to get that for you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, good grief.
I'm sorry, Murray Hill 40098 is busy.
Operator! Operator!
Your call, please.
You did not try to get that... Oh, for heaven's sake. You did not try to get that number wrong at all, did you? I asked you explicitly, and all you did was dial correctly.
I am sorry. What number are you calling?
Can't you once forget what number I'm calling and do something for me? Now I want to trace that call. It is my civic duty, and it is your civic duty to trace that call and apprehend those dangerous killers. And if you won't...
I will connect you with the chief operator.
Well, please. Oh, all this talk, I can't understand. Oh my gosh.
This is the chief operator.
Oh, hello, chief operator. I want you to trace a call, a telephone call, immediately. I don't know where it came from or who was making it, but it's absolutely necessary that it be tracked down because it was about a murder. A murder that someone's planning. A terrible, cold-blooded murder of a poor, innocent woman tonight at 11:15.
I see.
Can you trace that call for me? Can you track down those men?
Well, I'm not certain. It depends.
It depends on what?
It depends on whether the call is still going on. If it's a live call, we can trace it on the equipment. If it's disconnected, we can't.
Disconnected?
If the parties have stopped talking to each other.
Oh, but of course, they must have stopped talking to each other by now. That was at least 5 minutes ago. And they didn't sound like the type that would make a long call.
Well, I could try tracing it. May I have your name, please?
Mrs. Stevenson. Mrs. Albert Stevenson. But listen.
And your telephone number, please?
Oh, Plaza 32098. But if you go on wasting all this time...
Why do you want this call traced?
Why? No reason. I mean, I merely felt strongly that something ought to be done about it. These men sounded like killers. They're dangerous. They're going to murder this woman at 11:15 tonight. I thought the police ought to know.
Have you reported this to the police?
Well, no, not yet.
You want this call checked purely as a private individual?
Yes, but I mean, well...
I'm sorry, Mrs. Stevenson, but I'm afraid we couldn't make this check for you and trace the call just the way on your say-so.
But
As a private individual.
why?
We have to have something more official.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. You mean to tell me I can't report that there's going to be a murder without getting tied up in all this red tape? Why, it's perfectly idiotic. Well, all right, I'll call the police.
I'm sure that will be the best way to deal with it.
Oh, ridiculous. I've never heard such nonsense in all my life. Oh, my God. Ridiculous. These insolent.
What is it?
Then there's
Your call, please.
Police department. Get me the police department.
Ringing the police department.
then there.
Police Station 43, Sergeant Martin speaking.
Police department. This is Mrs. Stevenson. Mrs. Albert Stevenson. Stevenson of 5353 North Sutton Place. I'm calling to report a murder.
Huh?
I mean, the murder hasn't been committed yet. I just overheard plans for it over the telephone. Over a wrong number, you see, that the operator gave me. I've been trying to trace down the call myself, but everybody is so stupid. And I guess in the end, you're the only people who could do anything.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Well, it was a perfectly definite murder. I heard their plans distinctly. Two men were talking, and they were going to murder a woman at 11:15 tonight. She lives in a house near a bridge. Are you listening to me?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Oh, and there was a private patrolman on the street. He was going to go around for a beer on 2nd Avenue. And there was some third man, a client, who was paying to have this poor woman murdered. They were going to take her rings and her bracelets and use a knife. Well, it's unnerved me dreadfully, and I'm not well.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I see.
Well, it all happened about 8 minutes ago. Oh, then you can do something. You can do something. You
What?
do understand.
What's your name, ma'am?
Mrs. Stevenson.
Your
Mrs.
address?
Albert Stevenson.
Your address, ma'am?
Oh. 5353 North Sutton Place. That's near a bridge. The Queensboro Bridge, you know. And we have a private patrolman on our street, and
Yeah.
and 2nd Avenue is
And what was that? What was that number you were calling?
Murray Hill 40098. But that wasn't the number I overheard. I mean, Murray Hill 40098 is my husband's office. He's working late tonight, and I was trying to reach him to ask him to come home.
Yes.
I'm an invalid, you know, and it's the maid's night off, and I hate to be alone, even though he says
Yeah, well.
Even though he says as long as I have the telephone here right beside my bed.
Well, we'll look into it, Miss Stevenson. We'll see if we check out with the telephone company.
The telephone company said they couldn't check the call. The parties have stopped talking. I've already taken care of that.
Oh, you have, huh?
Yes! And personally, myself, I feel you ought to do something more immediate and drastic than just check the call. What good does check the call do if they've stopped talking? By the time you track it down, they'll have already committed the murder.
Yeah, well, we'll take care of it. Don't worry about it.
Oh, I say the whole thing calls for a search. A complete and thorough search of the whole city, the entire city. I'm very near a bridge, you see, and I'm not very far
You said?
from 2nd Avenue. And I know I would feel a whole lot better if you sent around a radio car to this neighborhood at once.
Wow. What makes you think the murder is going to be committed in your neighborhood, ma'am?
Well, I don't know. Only the coincidence is it's so horrible. 2nd Avenue, the patrolman, the bridge.
Yeah, well, 2nd Avenue, is a very long street, ma'am. And you know how many bridges there are in New York alone? Not to mention Brooklyn, Staten Island, Queens, and the Bronx.
Oh, for heaven's sakes, I know all that.
How do you know it isn't just some little house on Staten Island or some little on some 2nd Avenue you never heard about?
But I heard the call on the New York dialing system.
Well, maybe it was a long distance call you overheard.
No! No.
You know these telephones are funny things now, ma'am.
Oh.
Why don't you look at it this way? Supposing you hadn't broken in on a telephone, supposing you got your husband the way you always do, you wouldn't be upset, would ya?
I suppose not. But it sounded so inhuman. So cold-blooded.
Well, a lot of these murders are plotted in the city every day, ma'am. We'll manage to find almost all of them. But a clue of this kind is so vague, it's much more use to us than no clue at all.
But surely you can...
Unless of course, you have some reason for thinking this call was phony. Somebody was planning to murder you.
Me? Well, no, I hardly think so. I mean, why should anybody want to murder me? I'm alone all day and night. I see nobody except for my maid Eloise. She's a big 200-pounder.
Yeah?
Yes, she's too lazy to bring up my breakfast tray. And the only other person is my husband Albert. He's crazy about me. Oh, he adores me. He waits on me hand and